Well, hello there. Welcome back to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we are about all things cinema. Well, today I'm going to share with you my thoughts on a recent release from the Criterion Collection. Just going to take a couple of minutes of your time to share with you my thoughts on this title that comes in at spine number 1125 in the Criterion Collection, and it's called The Funeral from Uso Itami. Japanese director Uso Itami directed this film from 1984 called The Funeral. I had a chance to pick this up as part of the recent Target buy two get one sale. So I picked up Chan is Missing, Farewell Amore, and The Funeral as part of that sale, and that occurred shortly before the July Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale that for 50% off. Got a great deal when I picked up these three titles, including The Funeral. Definitely want to share with you what I think of this title. Now, I did reviews for Chan is Missing and Farewell Amore on this channel, so definitely check those out if you get a chance. And now I'm doing a review of The Funeral. So this is the 1984 film from Uso Itami. It's a Japanese director who also directed this title that's also in the collection as well, Tampopo from 1985. Now, I saw this title a couple of years back and really enjoyed this film. It is just a fascinating film and just has a bountiful list of special features, and it teaches you everything you ever wanted to know about ramen. So if you don't have Tampopo, highly recommend it. But I'm really glad that Criterion released The Funeral because this is another title from Uso Itami. Also helps me better understand this director and his place in filmmaking history and the importance of Nobuko Miyamoto. She was married to Juzo Itami, and the two of them made a number of films together in the 1980s, including his feature film debut, The Funeral, including Tampopo, and other titles as well. So definitely hoping that Criterion can release more films from this filmmaking duo, this husband-wife filmmaking duo who did some great work in Japan in the 80s and I believe the 90s. So this is The Funeral. So this film came out in 1984 and it comes in at around 124 minutes, and it deals with the very serious subject of a funeral, but deals with it in a dark comedy type of a way. So this film was so fascinating and interesting to watch, just as a family is dealing with the death of, in this case, a father or father-in-law. So Nobuko Miyamoto's character, she plays an actor in this film, and her father dies, and her husband here, who's up to the far left here, is played by Tsutomu Yamazaki. So they're both in the acting business. They learn of her father's death while they're on set, and so they come home to Tokyo to help the family with the arrangements for the funeral. This is, of course, her mother who, lost her husband, is now widowed. And so what I love about this film is at the very beginning, you do get a glimpse of the father, a few minutes of time between him and his wife and their fellowship before he dies. And then, of course, that sets into motion everything after that in the arrangements for his funeral and the family coming together and just all the things that go into, making the final arrangements for a loved one when they pass away, and just how serious and somber a time that is. But in the case of The Funeral, it also combines the very fascinating comedic side that can sometimes pop up during those proceedings, and it just really humanizes the whole process of how a family deals with this very serious subject matter. So I really enjoyed watching this film as a family story, being able to sort of relate to it, given having gone through similar experiences myself and my own family. And I think it is just a beautiful picture of Japanese culture and how, specific to that culture, how they deal with this process, but it's very universal in the fact that this is something that is common to, humanity. So whether it's in the Japanese culture or in the African-American Black culture here in the United States or anywhere around the world, anyone can relate to this particular family dealing with this situation at this time. And they can relate to the seriousness of it, but also to the light, hearted side of it as well. So I thought that was very fascinating. So let me read the back of the Criterion case. It says, It's death Japanese style in the rollicking and wistful first feature from maverick writer-director Uso Itami. So this is his feature film debut. In the wake of her lascivious father's sudden passing, a successful actor, Itami's wife and frequent collaborator Nobuko Miyamoto, right here, and her husband Tsutomu Yamazaki at the top left there, they leave Tokyo and return to their family house to oversee a traditional funeral. Over the course of 3 days of mourning that bring illicit escapades in the woods, a surprisingly materialistic priest, who's played by Yasuhiro Osu regular Chisu Ryu, and cinema's most epic sandwich handoff, the tensions between public propriety and private hypocrisy are laid bare. Deftly weaving dark comedy with poignant family drama, The Funeral is a fearless satire of the clash between old and new in Japanese society in which nothing, not even the finality of life, is off limits. So this film deals with the subject matter in a beautifully artistic way, and it's actually pretty stunning for a feature film debut that someone's able to take a subject as serious as a funeral and deal with it in the manner that he did. The big part of what helped them to do that was their own, they being Nobuko Miyamoto and Uso Itami, they were able to draw on their own life experience as the template for this film. So that life experience was her real father's death. When that occurred and they planned for that funeral, that served as the template and the basis for, hey, why don't we make a movie about this? We're living through this event. This would make a pretty interesting subject for a movie. And so they were able to draw on that actual experience in writing the funeral and making this film. So I found that interesting. You'll hear about that in the supplements for this release. So overall, I definitely recommend this as a film. It is very entertaining. It is incredibly funny at certain parts of it, but also at the same time, somber, funny. It's just a great mix of all those emotions and overall a very satisfying experience. So I can definitely recommend it as a film. Now, in terms of how does this look on video and how does it sound? Well, you get on the back here, it says high definition digital restoration with uncompressed monaural soundtrack. So it doesn't say a 4K or 2K digital restoration. It just says a high definition digital restoration. So don't really know what the difference there is in terms of quality, but visually speaking, this film looks really, really nice on this Blu-ray disc. So I was very pleased with the image. It looked very clean, looked beautifully organic. It's a film that's 38 years old from 1984. And I think the restoration work that was put into it was very good, very effective. And as I pop open the case and I look on the inside here, of course, you see the booklet has information on the restoration that I will read here. It just says, the funeral is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.33 to 1. This high definition digital restoration was undertaken by Itami Productions at Imagika Entertainment Media Services in Tokyo, disc mastering Pixelogic Media. So they went through the scanning, all the cleanup of the dirt and the debris, and I think the result was very, very positive. This picture looks great. It looks clean, organic, a lot of nice detail in it. And I'm not sure how much a 4K or 2K restoration would have made a difference, but overall, this high definition image looks very, very nice on this Blu-ray disc. And I thought the audio was perfectly fine as well with this uncompressed monaural soundtrack. Now, I think the big draw, in addition to the film itself and how nice it looks on this Blu-ray, I think one of the big draws that you will get, one of the big benefits that you will probably take away from this if you're interested in this type of cinema. This is a Japanese film. It's in Japanese, so you're going to be reading subtitles if you don't understand that language. And if you're interested in Japanese cinema and branching out into that area, if you haven't done so already, I think this is a great title to consider. And one of the things you'll get from those special features is a much greater appreciation for this director. I know for me personally, having seen this film here, Tampopo, this was my introduction to Uso Itami's work, but I didn't make the connecting point that the main character in this film is played by his wife, Nobuko Miyamoto. I had not made that connection until watching this film and realizing, oh, that's right, they made a lot of films together, including Tampopo, including another film after Tampopo, and you begin to understand Uso Itami as a filmmaker much, much more. You also understand a lot more about the influence of Uso Itami's father, who also was a director, and the work that he did and how that influenced Uso Itami as he eventually came around to directing film. He didn't start off making films, but he eventually came around to directing films, I think, starting in his 50s. So just a very fascinating story is what you'll get from the special features. And a big part of that fascination of that story from the special features is the fact that you're hearing directly from Nobuko Miyamoto herself. One of the interviews is an interview with Nobuko Miyamoto, and it is very informative because she talks about her relationship with Uso Itami, who of course passed away in 1997. And that whole process of making this film. Their son appears in this movie. Their son's name is Manpei Ikuchu. So that provides a lot of the humor of this movie is Manpei's role in this movie. Of course, he didn't have any formal lines. He was just directed to go here, go there, stand here, do this, do that. And so Manpei in his interview talks a lot about that whole process of making the movie as being a child actor at that time, how that experience was for him and working for his dad and his mom and that interaction on set, and how he was sometimes scolded, for misbehaving and some of the improvisational things that he did that made its way into the final movie. So that was a great interview. So great interview with Nobuko Miyamoto, very informative. And also the interview with Manpei, the son, Ikichu, who's now, of course, a grown man. And then, of course, you've got this feature called Creative Marriages, Uso Itami and Nobuko Miyamoto, which talks about their relationship and the films that they made together and just that whole journey that they went through together. It's a short program that's produced by the Criterion Channel. And then one of the last features on here that is very fascinating is you have some commercials for Ichiroko Tart by director Uso Itami. So Uso Itami did some commercials for this company called Ichiroko Tart. And the owner of that company that hired Uso Itami did a lot of the funding for some of his films. And so they show several of these commercials in that feature on here. On the inside of the case here, you'll see that you have this wonderful stapled booklet, which I always love seeing a nice stapled booklet. And of course, the interior is pretty much plain gray. And then you'll see, check out this nice art of this booklet. That is absolutely beautiful, isn't it? But the content that's in here is really, really nice. Of course, you see a picture there of the director, Uso Itami. And what you have in here is you have an excellent essay called At a Loss by Pico Ayer. And that's the main actor there who's on the top left up here. Tsutomu Yamazaki about to get himself into some trouble there. So you have an excellent essay from Pico Ayer. And then you've also got another essay, or actually a funeral diary from Uso Itami. So this is the funeral diary. So it's his diary notes. And then, of course, several pictures and other aspects of the production, the restoration, casting, all of the standard information that you have in these stapled booklets. And I always love getting a nice stapled booklet from Criterion. So as many of you know, if you follow this channel, you know I like a stapled booklet. But overall, just a great addition from Criterion. I mean, I don't really know much else to say other than to say that if you're interested in foreign cinema, if you're interested in Japanese cinema, if you don't mind a blind buy, something you haven't seen before, you just want to discover something new, I highly recommend checking out both of these films together, actually. Checking out The Funeral, checking out Tampopo. This film came out in 1984, this came out in 1985, and this film is an absolute knockout. this one is as well. They're both super funny, super interesting, gives you a glimpse into a filmmaker that you may not have heard of before or know much about, and just extremely satisfying. I really enjoyed this edition when I picked it up from Criterion several years back, and now that I've seen The Funeral from that same director, gives me a greater perspective of his work as a filmmaker and his relationship, of course, with his wife, and both of them being a filmmaking partnership in Japan during the 1980s. So it just sort of rounds that out, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more films from Uso Itami in the Criterion Collection. So that's where I'll leave it. But let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this film? Have you seen The Funeral from Uso Itami? If so, what do you think of it? Also, let me know what you think about Tampopo from Uso Itami if you've seen this film. And let me know of any other films from Uso Itami and Nobuko Miyamoto that you've seen. Let me know that in the comment section below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time at the movies. Peace.